Hey, hello guys. William Wood here. I'm super excited to be with you, and we're going to have some fun over the next hour or so. We're going to be talking about money and abundance and mindset. And so I've got some bills here in my hand because we're going to be talking about money, and we're going to be talking about also just your relationship with success. Because if you're like me and if you're like so many other people, it's like sometimes we look at this stuff and we kind of freak out. We just turned Benjamin on his head here. We won't have him stand on his head quite yet, so we'll turn it over this way. But we look at this stuff, or we start thinking about how it is that that our life relates to this, or our own personal worth relates to this stuff, and we start to get kind of tense or tight, or all knotted up inside. And we'd all like to improve our relationship with money. So we're going to be spending some time actually looking at some bills and talking about money, because I have this belief. I believe that money is nothing but a relationship. And what do I mean by that? I mean just that money is a relationship. Money is a relationship with yourself. Money is a relationship with the marketplace. And if your relationships aren't in order, then you're also not going to have much money. and what I mean by that is relationship first with your mind. So we're going to go through 3 relationships: mind, heart, and then marketplace. So mind, heart, marketplace. And those are the three relationships that we're going to go through. And we're going to look at some different amounts here. I've got a 1, I've got a 2, I've got a 5, I'm missing a 10, but I've got a 20 and a 100. So we're going to be talking about relationships with all of these different denominations, and then how they relate to our personal worth. So one of my fundamental beliefs is that money, in essence, is 90% mind and heart, and 10% relationship out there in the marketplace, or out there doing stuff. And if you got your mind and heart right, you're going to take the right actions. You're going to do the right things. You're going to put yourself in the right places. And if your mind and heart are off, you're going to end up doing things that don't help you out. So here's another way of saying basically the same thing. We have thoughts that influence our emotions. Emotions influence our actions, and then ultimately actions are what drive our results. So if you're not taking any action, I hate to break it to you, no matter how much you visualize that Ferrari, it's probably not coming your way. I'm just saying. I have a big problem with what I call, what's been described as like The Secret or other things like that. It's okay, but it's like, come on, you got to go out and do some stuff too. So mind, heart, action. Mind, heart, action. Head, heart, actions. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the real litmus test that I have for you in terms of your own relationship with money is this: based on wherever you are today, are you doing the things that you need to do to get your goal with money? And what is your goal? Is your goal to make $5,000? Is your goal to make $10,000 a month? Those are probably 2 of the really common early ones. Is it to make $30,000 or $100,000 or even more? And no matter what your goal is, the thing that prevents you from going from wherever you're at to wherever you need to be is action, and then also having your mind and heart lined up. So let me just explain this for a quick minute. I used to think that the most important thing for making money was just hard work. And then I started to look around, and I visited third world countries, and I watched people literally working 12-hour days for $5 or $10 a week. And they worked like all the time, like 12-hour shifts, 14-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts. And these people worked hard, and yet they weren't ahead. And then simultaneously, also while I was in these third world countries, I would meet these people who were born into wealth. They were born into massive abundance. and it was around them all the time. And they worked a couple hours a day, and they lived just these amazing lives with this lush abundance all around them. And I thought, well, okay, there's some difference in like circumstance and some difference maybe where they were born. But then even we come here to the United States, and it's like we all know people. I know a guy who has 3 jobs that pay him $10 an hour. And this is not a knock on him. He's doing everything that he knows how to do to be able to support his family. He is working, 2 of those jobs are full-time, 1 job is part-time. So he's working like, 16 to 19 hours a day some days. And he's literally just grinding away his life force, and he's not getting ahead. And so I look at this relationship between how hard you work, the number of hours you work, and the amount of money that you have, and I don't necessarily see a correlation. Some of the most successful people that I've coached that have been clients of mine, clients that have made hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in a month, they don't work more than 3 to 5 hours a day. And so the first thing that comes to me is you go, well, wait a minute. Well, you're telling me that money and time don't have anything to do with each other? No, I'm just saying that they might have something to do with each other depending on how you decide to make money, but they don't necessarily match. And in order to increase the level of abundance in your life, it doesn't necessarily mean doubling the number of hours that you're working. And so if you're thinking in your mind, well, I'd love to have more, I'd love to live a more abundant life, but I don't really want to like double my hours. I don't want to double my workload. That's okay. That's not what we're going to be talking about. What we're going to be talking about is something very, very different. And that is, how do you wrap your mind around a higher dollar amount? How do you wrap your mind around making more money for the same amount of time? Because could we all agree just for a minute that if you could, well, before we get there, let's ask this. If we were to look out at the world, and let's even take the field that you're in right now, and I want you just to kind of play along while I play along in my field, okay? But just in the field that you're in. So if you're in sales, this would apply to you as a salesperson. If you're an employee working for a company, this would be related to your company or your type of companies that are out there in the world. And here's the basic question. The question is there somebody who's in your field, or is there somebody who's even in your company who makes twice as much money for putting in the same number of hours? So is there somebody that makes twice as much working the same number of hours? Because we're not talking about breaking your back or, working so many hours that you miss your family or you lose your spouse or something like that. But think about it for a minute. So I'm in the coaching field, meaning I help people make changes to their mind and their heart in relationship to money, in relationship to, their important relationships in their life, and or to some personal goal that they have. And so I look out in the world of success coaches. Are there people who make twice what I make in a given month? And the answer is absolutely yes. I personally know several coaches that easily make double what I make in a given month, working the same number of hours or less. Isn't that incredible? Right? So before, I used to work for a Fortune 50 company, and I could have said the same thing. I was a sales guy, and there were guys that were working in the same company, same number of hours, who were making 3 or 4 times what I was making. So we can say for a moment, there are people in almost any field. Maybe there's some field where that's not true, but I mean, even like in the construction field, like when I was putting myself through college, I worked construction. I was a laborer. I was the guy who was like manning the shovel and, digging ditches and like, tamping things down and like hauling things from one side of the yard to the next, and basically doing whatever odd job the foreman wanted me to do. And I was making about $10 an hour. So if I was working construction, could I say, are there guys that were working construction who were making 20? The answer is, yeah, absolutely. And so we can go, well, we don't have to sacrifice our time to be able to make more money. But we do have to do something different, because with the construction example, for a moment, is there a difference between the guy who's digging a ditch and the guy who's making $20 an hour? And the answer is yes. There's some sort of skill gap. Construction's an easy one, right? We can say, well, yeah, the guy who's making $10 an hour maybe doesn't have a lot of skills. Maybe he's a hard worker. He's a good guy, or maybe he's apprenticing, but he's not, he's not the journeyman. And frankly, the journeyman is probably making more than $20 an hour, depending on where he has a job and what state he lives in and all those things. There was a journeyman that I worked with, a journeyman electrician, who was making, I think he was making about $75 an hour at the time. So I was making, I think, 8 to start and then 10 later on, and then he was making 75. So he was making like 7.5 times what I was making, working about the same number of hours, because I would leave when he left. I was kind of along there to help him out and make sure his day went fine. Of course, the gap between him and me was skills. The gap between him and me was skills. So one, and we're starting to get there, right? And this goes into the head, and we aren't quite to the heart yet. But what's the difference between the guy who makes $10 an hour and $20 an hour? The answer is there's some sort of specialized knowledge or some sort of specialized skill that allows him to put more value into the hours that he's working. Because ultimately, the amount of money that you make has nothing to do with the number of hours that you work if your skills are very, very low. Because if you're, let me say it this way, if I have an employee, if I've hired an employee for the office, and that employee is doing a job that's worth $3 an hour, something that I could hire out to somebody in the Philippines to do. I have somebody who works on my blog that I pay about $3 an hour, which is a good wage for the Philippines. But if I have a task that's only worth $3 an hour, would I be willing to pay $20 an hour for it? The answer is no, right? Because I can find somebody to do that. Same thing with me. If my time is worth $100 an hour or $150 an hour or $200 an hour, whatever it happens to be at the time, would I be willing to do something that's only worth $10 an hour if I can hire it out? The answer is no. Otherwise, my income starts to drop. And so, this is the question. Again, what's the difference between the person who's making in an hour $5, $20, and $100? And the answer is value and skills. Value and skills. So there are coaches. There's a coach that I know of here in Utah, and I charge right now $250 an hour for a lot of the work that I do in this particular space. And he charges depending on the type of client he's working with. But for his one-on-one clients right now, my understanding is that he charges $3,500 an hour. So that means that I don't even know what that comes out to, but it's like more than 10 times the value that he's doing. So he works actually a fewer number of hours than I do, and his income is substantially larger than mine. Now, there's also this coach, there's a guy named Tony Robbins, and a lot of you have heard of him, but Tony Robbins is a coach. He works in my same field. I'm sure he works hard, but I've heard that when he's not like doing a seminar that he actually doesn't work a lot of hours. And I've heard that he charges a minimum retainer of $1 million for one session with the client. That's for an hour, right? Or an hour or two. So he's probably the highest paid coach in the country. But if you look at that, you go, well, what's the difference between the guy who charges $250 an hour and the guy who charges $1 million or $500,000 for an hour? And you'd say, well, there's got to be some kind of value difference between them. Well, let's turn this back around and let's apply this to your own situation for just a moment. So if you look at your own situation, I want you to grab a pen here, right? I've got a purple marker, but grab a pen and grab a sticky note or grab a piece of paper, and I want you to write down the dollar per hour that you're earning right here, right now. The dollar per hour. Are you earning closer to the 5, closer to the 10, closer to the 20, closer to the 40? What is it that you're earning? and just write that down. And I remember in my first job was I was working for a movie theater up in Alaska. I made $4.75 an hour. I had no skills. I had none, zero. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't think I ever got a raise in all the time that I worked there. I did enjoy what I did. I got free movies, and that was kind of a nice perk. But I made $5 an hour. And I remember that to go from $5 an hour, and I don't have it, to go to 10, right? So just imagine I'm holding a 10. The main difference was in the level of skill that I had. And then I remember my first job where they paid me about $20 an hour. And this is when I became a translator. I would make, depending on the hour, between $20 and about $45 an hour. That's somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a year, equivalent if I'd been working full time, but I wasn't. I was a student. And the difference there was I had a skill set. I had a skill set of turning things from one language into another language. I remember when I became a coach and I had my first $100 hour. It was amazing to me. I had never done that, and I thought, wow. And what did I have to do to be able to get that $100? I had to go out and find a skill set that somebody would be willing to pay for. Now, this is if I am charging by the hour, but this is where we're starting off, right? So here's the exercise that I'd like you to think about. So you wrote down your number on the piece of paper. I'm writing down a number as well. Okay, for a lot of the coaching work that I do right now, where I'm doing like goal coaching and things like that, I charge $250. And your number may say 10, it may say 20, it may say it's $1,000. I don't know. I don't know what your hourly rate is. But that means that you're willing to ask somebody for whatever dollar amount is on that piece of paper in exchange for your time or your service. So here's my question. What would happen to you mentally if you were to double that number, right? So for me, just as an example, if I were to set this number aside and I were to write down the number 500, and I were to say, what if I were to charge somebody $500 for a single hour? So here's the question. What kind of value would I need to put into that hour in order to feel like what I had to offer was worth it? Now, if you had $10 an hour to start or $100 an hour to start, doesn't matter. When you look at that number double, here's the key question I want to ask you. What are the thoughts that show up in your mind, and what are the emotions that show up in your heart? I'll be honest, when I look at this, have I ever charged this? When I've done some corporate work, I've come pretty close. I think I've charged like $433 an hour or something like that. I'd have to go back and tally it up. It was a higher number than what I usually did, but I was also being flown across the country. I was away from my family, and there were some other circumstances. And on days when I've done teaching, I've charged upwards in the $400 an hour range as well. But when I look at that and I think about, for example, having a one-on-one client, here in my office doing a similar type of work that I do in terms of coaching, when I look at that $500 an hour number, it causes just a little bit of tension in the gut. When I imagine looking at somebody and saying, my services, $500 an hour, and then being able to look at them and keep a straight face. And I'd ask you the same question. It's like, what happens to you when you take your number, whatever that happens to be, and you imagine asking somebody, and maybe it's your employer, and you say, hey, I am worth $500 an hour. I'm worth $100 an hour. Are you willing to pay it to me? What happens? What happens in your mind and heart? What kind of thoughts and emotions come up? And what I'm going to argue here for the rest of our time together is I'm going to argue that the thoughts and the feelings that you have around that number are one of the very first things that will prevent you from actually getting that number. And so if I've already stirred up your stuff, go ahead and write down what those thoughts and feelings are. And just jot down what it is that's come up. So for me, it's like a little bit of fear. There's a little bit of tightness, like right here in the gut. And there's some thoughts like, oh, I'm not worth that, right? Or I couldn't ask for that. That's a lot of money. And that the phrase, that's a lot of money, plays out in my head. Now, if doubling your income wasn't enough to get that number out of you, I want you to do this. And just while you either write down your thoughts and feelings, but if I haven't quite got you yet, then I want you to double it again, right? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to write down $1,000. And again, I don't care what field you're in. There is somebody in your company that makes $1,000 an hour, or somebody in your field if it's not in your company. If you're like a solopreneur, like you're self-employed and you don't make it and you are the company, right? There is somebody in your field that makes $1,000 an hour. Promise you, right? Might have to go to a different company to find it. But if you think about earning $1,000 an hour, besides probably getting a little excited, it's like if you actually thought about asking a customer or asking your boss for a raise for this amount, what comes up? What are the thoughts? What are the emotions? Do you get excited? Do you get angry? Do you get tense? Because the very first thing that's going to prevent you from being able to do what it takes to earn this dollar amount is going to be you're wrapping your mind and your heart around the number. Just plain and simple. Plain and simple. And you go, well, Will, I don't even know how to get that number. I know, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We aren't to the actions. We're just on the mind and the heart first. And so part of what happens is that the subconscious mind develops a real comfort around an income level. And we'll see this. We call this a set point in weight. So for example, we'll see someone with their weight get stuck at a certain weight. For me lately, it's been the 175 mark. I've lost 53 pounds and then I've just been like at 175. Anytime my weight's gone down below it, I've bounced back up. Anytime I've gone up above it to 178, it's like the weight comes back down. And I'm working on breaking that because I got a little bit of weight left to lose. But it's like I've got this set point. It's like in my mind, I've got this number that's stuck. And my body is kind of course correcting and adjusting to get that number. Well, the same thing happens with your income. Why should it be that you make $30,000 a year? Why should it be that you make $60,000 a year? Why should it be that you make 100? Why should it be that you make 500? And why not earn these higher dollar amounts? If you look at, like, you go to Walmart, what do they pay somebody who's on the floor? $8 an hour, $10 an hour, I'm guessing, right? What does the general manager of that store make? Oh, probably $100,000 or $150,000, maybe $200,000, I'm guessing, I don't know. What about a regional manager? Someone who, runs several stores. What about the CEO? Maybe makes $1 million or $2 million. In one company, we see incomes that range from, $8 an hour up to millions of dollars a year. In the coaching business, we see people who maybe make a couple $100 an hour versus somebody who makes $1 million for an hour. Part of what separates you is what you think. And so how do you start to first program your mind so that you're willing to accept a higher dollar amount in your mind? Well, this goes back into our thought, emotion, action wheel. And this is what I was showing you right at the beginning today. And so for this thought, emotion, action wheel, what it is that what it is that I'm going to invite you to do is I'm going to invite you to do some exercises daily to first get your mind wrapped around it. Now, this is sometimes where people end, and all they do is they just kind of imagine making a higher dollar amount, but they never really solve their emotional stuff, and they never go out and start taking the actions that are congruent with the new level of success or abundance in their life. And I will tell you this, that there is a difference between making $5 an hour and $20 an hour. And it's not all just thinking. A lot of it's action. If you go in and you look at the people who are making $20 an hour, they are doing certain types of work. If you look at people who make $100 an hour, they're doing certain types of things. They are providing more value to the marketplace in the time that they work than somebody who's making $5 an hour. The kid who's flipping burgers doesn't make as much as the person who manages the store. The person who manages the store does not make as much money as the person who manages 5 stores. And the person who manages 5 stores does not make as much money as the person who owns 100 stores. And so there are predictable actions. There are predictable things that you can do to really radically make a huge difference with your own relationship with money. But it starts with your thoughts. And the first change in thought is being willing to receive what's coming your way. And so I want you to do this with your new number, whether it's $100 or $500 or $1,000 or whatever it is. I want you to, your first exercise is to exercise your mind in a new way around this number. I'm going to recommend that you take this dollar amount and you literally place it somewhere where you can see it on a daily basis. And if you don't want $1 per hour because you're trying to separate out your time from your income, and maybe you've got some product to sell or something like that, then go ahead. Or you're building a team and you're leveraging your income. That's fine. But for now, we're going to assume that you've got an hourly number. But I want you to post that number somewhere, and like it could be up on your computer at work. It could be at home, like on your bathroom mirror. And I'm going to recommend, if you have it, that you also tape up a dollar amount, a dollar bill, or if you can find them, if it's like $500 an hour that you want to earn, either tape up a picture of $500 bills, or ideally you actually tape the money up there, or a check written out to yourself that says $500. And the reason is you really want to create a strong visual image of this, because this is the very first level of creating a new result, is learning to interact with your mind in a new way. And the very first thing that you want to do to interact with your mind in a new way is to start sending your mind new visual signals that things are different. And if you actually have the dollar amount that you want to earn per hour, whether 5, 10, 20, 500, 1,000, whatever it is, and you've got it like taped up on the wall. Now, if you got lots of kids, you might want to be careful about that, right? Or a spouse who likes to, spend your money or something like that. Oh, cool, $1,000, flick it off the wall. Your kid goes buys like 5 iPods or something, right? But you've got this taped up at the wall, and then you look at it once a day. And as you're looking at the money, and as you're looking at that dollar amount, is to literally look at it with confidence in your eyes and to say, I am worth $500 an hour. And then after you say it, just to stare at it like you mean it. No blinking, no looking away, just maybe smiling a little bit, just kind of holding that in your consciousness. And holding the idea in your mind is the first step to raising your value. Now, it is not the last step. And if all you do is just think about money that way, you're probably not going to raise your income. And that's the disappointing part. I know it's like, dang, if it were only that easy, right? But it is a really important first step, and it's a step that a lot of people miss. They never get used to speaking it out loud. And the first time they try to speak it is when they go ask their boss for a raise, or when they ask their client for a higher dollar amount, and the client goes, no, why should I pay you that? And you go, oh, and then you're not used to saying it. You're not used to thinking it. And so you kind of freeze up and you get all locked up around it. So the first step is literally visualizing it. So again, put the dollar amount up, put the bills up, or if you can't afford the bills right now, get them eventually, but write yourself out a check, or place a bill up, underneath it on the wall that represents that dollar amount, and start to once a day, 5 or 6 times, just, I'm worth $500 an hour. I'm worth $500 an hour. I am worth $500 an hour. And then just to look at it open, confident, and receiving. So this is the first thing you can do. The second thing that you can do to start to improve your relationship with money is to go ahead and to write out a series of affirmations. And this is basically the same basic principle. We're just working on programming the mind. We haven't got into the heart or the actions. And we'll be talking about those here in a minute. But if I want to make $500 an hour, I literally could write down, I am now worth $500 an hour. I am now worth $500 an hour. I am now worth $500 an hour. And I can just write that almost like you're writing lines, on the blackboard when you were a kid and you got in trouble. But this time you're doing it in the positive direction, in the direction that you want to go. Now, again, a lot of people just stop here. They just stop with the visualization. They stop by talking to their dollar bill on the wall, and their income sadly stays at the same level. There's no change. And why is that? Why is that, they ask? Well, it's because you're not done. The next step is to start to plan. And this is really what I call blueprinting. In blueprinting, we look at the person, we start going out and finding examples of people who earn the dollar amount. So let's say that you want to earn $100 an hour, and you want to earn that, 5 hours a day, 6 days a week, or 4 days a week. So let's say 4 days a week, 5 hours a day, that would be $2,000 a week. And so the very next step of, again, we're just working at the level of mind here, is to go out and to find examples of people who have actually gotten that result. So you want to go out and find somebody that's earning $100 an hour, 5 hours a day. That's $500 a day, 4 days a week. That's, I guess, $1,600. My math is bad. There's a reason I'm not like an engineer, right? But that's $1,600 a week on 20 hours worth of work. And you go, who do I know that's already doing that? Now, I'm going to guess that for a lot of you, that's a real short list, meaning you don't know a lot of people that actually pull in that kind of money in that amount of time. And if you do, that's cool too. But really, again, the second step is to go into your sphere of influence and go, who do I know that does this? And once you find an example, you start to notice what kind of skills this person has, maybe what kind of education they have, maybe, although that's not necessarily important in a lot of fields. Now, knowledge may be important and skills may be important, but formal education may not be. But a certification could be really important, or a certain skill set that they possess might be really important. For example, in the coaching world, the first hurdle to get over is to actually know how to hold a coaching session, which means that there's some kind of coaching education that has to be put in place. You have to actually go out and learn how to work with people and how to get a result. After you do that, though, there's a lot of broke coaches. There's a lot of coaches that are out there, and maybe they charge a lot per hour, but they don't have a lot of clients, or maybe maybe they're not actually getting the dollar amount that they're trying to charge. And so they have the skill set, they know how to work with somebody, but they don't actually get a constant stream of clients coming into them. Well, why is that? Well, one of the reasons that is because they're missing an important skill set. In this case, their skill set is probably sales and maybe marketing. So they don't actually know how to create the sales and marketing funnel that is going to generate them the kind of income that they're looking to make. So you can have a great coach, they have the coaching skill set, but they don't have the marketing skill set. And if you got a great coach with a great marketing background, or who's working with a great marketer, you can find a coach who makes 7 figures, and there are, again, examples of 8-figure, and I think there's even 9-figure coaches, which is mind-boggling in terms of what they can do. If you're an employer, so like, let's say I'm back at the construction company and I'm making $5 an hour and I want to make 10, I would look in the company and I would go, well, who's making $10 an hour, and what kind of skill sets do they have, and what kind of actions are they taking? Now, we're not doing anything about it yet, but we're still on the mental side of things. And what we're doing is we're blueprinting, we're planning out. Okay, well, if I want to make $10 an hour, I've got to go from digging ditches to being able to work the stop sign. You know, I got to know I got to have the safety training and the training to be able to, like, you know, stop traffic and direct traffic. And I think those guys in a lot of places make 15 to 20 bucks an hour. So it's like, wow, well, I can go from shoveling, right, from learning how to work a shovel to learning how to, you know, twist a stop sign. And I can go from an income of $5 an hour to 20 bucks an hour. I can 4 times my income by learning a skill. So what do I got to do? Well, maybe I go talk to some of these guys and go, hey, what kind of training did you have? You know, how did you learn how to twist that stop sign, right? And, you know, did you have to go to a school? Did you have to belong to a union? Did you have to, you know, get in good with the boss? Like, what did you do to be able to get that job? And then I actually don't know the answer. He's going to tell you a certain number of things. If when I was working for an electrician, it's like to go from the ditch digger to the journeyman, there was a process of apprenticing. And so the way to close the gap was to actually go in and to become an apprentice. I worked for a company where if you wanted to move into management, you had to go get an MBA, which meant that there was a couple of years of training. In order to become a coach, I had to go through, what did I end up going through? My initial coaching program was about 500 hours. And then after that, I've done thousands of hours. I'm up into like the 5,000 hour range for coaching training. So there was this process of getting an education that allowed me to increase my value. Maybe your income level doesn't have to do with going out and getting any kind of formal education, but maybe it means doing things a little bit differently. If you go up to your boss, for example, and you say, what could I do for you that would be worth an extra $10,000 a year? He might have to think about that for a minute. Or if you said to the boss, if I could find a way to generate an extra $40,000 for you, would you be willing to pay me an extra 10? And the boss might say no, but the boss might say yes, depending on the type of company that you're in. My challenge to you would be to go out and have that conversation. Or if I make you an extra $100,000, boss, would you be willing to pay me 20? And the answer might be yes. The answer might be no. He might say, well, no, you need to generate $200,000 in revenue to be able to pay you an extra $20,000 or $30,000, depending on the type of field you're in, and depending on what his margins look like. But you go, wow, okay. So now I'm blueprinting and I'm starting to battle plan, and I'm starting to look at this and say, in order to take my income up to the next level, in order to really develop this abundant mind, I've got to first wrap my brain around it by being willing to just look at myself and say, I am worth this dollar amount. But then we got a blueprint, and we got to figure out, how do we close that gap? What are the skill sets? What are the actions? What are the activities that I've got to do? Again, if I've got a good model, if I've got this person, and we're going back to this $100 an hour, 4 days a week, 5 hours a day. So, that's five. That is, no, what am I talking about? That is $2,000, $2,000 a week. So I go out and I find this guy who's making $1,000 a week. I find out what he does. And then what I want to do is I want to start to interview him if he's willing and open, and find out, what kind of activities he's doing, what kind of sales activities, what kind of marketing activities, what kind of professional activities is he doing. And once I've got that nailed down, now I've got a blueprint. Now I've got the thought blueprint that will allow me to close that gap. Now, the only thing then that will separate you from that person and separate you from that level of income is taking the same actions consistently over a period of time. I'm going to say this again because this is that important. The only thing then that will separate you from that level of income, once you have the blueprint, as long as you have an accurate blueprint, is taking the same actions consistently over a given amount of time. So the easiest way that I know of to increase your income is to go out and find somebody who's already done it and do what they're doing. Now, ideally, you find them in the same field you're in, or you find them in the same company you're in, or if not, maybe you need to take a hard look at your field. If the ceiling on your field is $5 an hour, I'm sorry to tell you, you got to find a new field, right? And the great news is that there's lots of fields that you can choose from that can give you a substantially higher income. Lots of them. So, and there's lots of them that kind of might do the same kind of thing that you're doing right now. So for my case, I'm a coach. I want to make $500 an hour. I would go out and I would start looking for coaches that made $500 an hour. And I would ask myself, what are they doing differently than I'm doing? And just recently, I was asking myself that question, because I went out and I was looking at these coaches and I go, okay, what's the difference between Will making $250 an hour and the coaches that are making $500? The answer that came back was that the coaches that were making $500 an hour were doing more work in groups. And so I had to look at it and go, now, not all of them. I know people who aren't, but a lot of them are. The vast majority of them are either teaching seminars or they are working with, groups of 5, 10, 20 people. And so I looked at it and I go, okay, now I'm not used to doing that. Or I wasn't used to doing that. I've been doing that for a while now, but I wasn't used to doing that. And I go, wow, I'm not used to working in groups. What does that mean? There's a skill gap, or there's an experience gap now that I needed to go ahead and close. And how did I then go out and start to get the experience? Well, I call this the parenting principle. I am a parent. I'm a father of 5. And I will tell you categorically that there is absolutely nothing in this world that will prepare you to be a parent except for being a parent. If what you want to do is you want to do public speaking, there is nothing in this world that will prepare you for public speaking except for speaking in public. There is nothing that will prepare you for leadership like finding someone to follow you, right? And then leading them. And as you do that, you're going to learn the life lessons that you need to learn to be able to make the important life changes that you want to make. And so same thing goes with whatever the skill set is. It's like, if you want to be an electrician, how do you become a good electrician? You go out and be an electrician. Now, it turns out there's laws and stuff around that. And if you want to be a good electrician, you got to go apprentice with somebody. But you go apprentice with somebody long enough, and after a couple of years, you gain the skill base and the knowledge base, and you read the books and whatever else, take the test that you got to take. And then before long, you're a journeyman and you're a master electrician. A good master electrician might make a healthy 6-figure income. I have a couple relatives that do that, and they make good living, right? Now, but they went through their apprenticeship program. You want to be a good coach? You find a good coach, you study with a good coach, you learn the art of coaching, you learn the art of marketing, you earn the art of working in groups, and you increase your income. If you're working at a Walmart, you ask the boss, if you know that to double your income, you've got to move up into that store manager position. You go, how do I become a store manager? And then you start doing the things that qualify you to get to the store manager level. You start building the skills. You start going into the trainings. You start taking the classes. You start reading the books. You start doing the same things. If you're a sales guy or a saleswoman, you go, in my field of sales, what are the 6-figure sales earners doing, or what are the 7-figure sales earners doing? And once you get that mental blueprint, then now you've got your map. Now, again, we're only at the head level, and I told you there were 3 things. There's head, heart, and actions or marketplace. So what comes next? Well, once you've got the blueprint made, then the very next step then is to go in and start taking the actions that person who makes that income level takes. So if I want to make $500 an hour, and I know to get there that what I've got to do is I've got to teach more group classes, or I've got to teach seminars, then if I want to, and that's the model that I'm going to follow, and I found 4 or 5 people that are doing that, and I'm looking at a couple of people that I really respect, then what I've got to do then is I've got to go out and I've got to follow the model, and I've got to take the same actions that they take over a given period of time. And if I can do that, I will get a similar or same result. I might get a better result. I might get a little worse result, but I'm going to get a result that's kind of somewhere in that ballpark. And so that means that my job becomes relatively easy. But what's the hard thing? Or simple, not easy. What's the hard thing about that? Well, the hard thing is if you've got a $250 an hour mindset, doing $500 an hour activities is going to feel weird. It's going to feel different. I'm not used to doing that. I'm not used to the emotional strain that this puts on me. I'm not used to the feelings that I have to deal with. I'm not used to the types of circumstances that I run into at $500 an hour activities. You have to grow into it with the parenting principle. Now, what almost everyone will do who is trying to grow themselves is they will give up, because the type of activities that it requires to be able to do not just once or twice, but to do consistently to make that level of income, they're harder, or they're different. At least they're not familiar. And so what people will do then is their emotions will start to come up, and they'll start to get tightness, they'll start to get tension, they'll start to get stress, because they're not used to taking those activities. And it will be the emotions then that cause the person to start to avoid the types of activities that will lead them to higher levels of abundance, greater levels of success, and to really get the kind of results that they're looking for. What that means then is that to get to the next level, you're going to need help learning to really manage your emotions. Why? Because as you take the new actions that you need to take, it will be your heart that throws you off. I see this all the time. I saw this really interestingly yesterday in a weight loss class that I was teaching. So again, back to, taking the actions of a bigger earner. I'm out taking the actions of a bigger earner by teaching group classes, so I can increase my dollar per hour, so I can serve more people, and I can have a higher value to the marketplace, right? But I'm working with a gal, and she wants to drop her weight, and she's saying, nothing's working, my weight's not going down. Now, I totally have sympathy for this because I've been in the same place. But she's like, nothing is working, my weight is not going down. I've been taking actions for 5 weeks, and my weight has not come down. And I asked, I said, well, do you want to know why your weight's not coming down? Or do you want to stay stuck? And she says, no, I want to know. I go, okay, this is going to be kind of direct. And she goes, okay, give it to me. And I said, the reason that your weight's not going down is because you're not doing the activities that will make your weight go down. You're doing the wrong things. And it doesn't matter if you take action steps towards a goal if they're not lined up, right? So if this is what it looks like to weigh 165 pounds, which is where I'm going, but my actions are over here in alignment with weighing 185 pounds, what's going to happen? If I'm eating like a 185 pound person, I'm going to weigh 185 pounds. If I eat like a 165 pound person, it won't be that long before I weigh 165 pounds. And so I said to her, the reason that you're not losing weight is that you are doing actions on a daily basis, but the action that she was taking was starving herself. She says, I'm going to skip a meal. And I says, what happened? She goes, well, I'm actually making up for the lost calories by like kind of eating more in the evenings. That's my memory. That may not have been exactly what she said, but that's kind of the spirit of what she said. And so it's like, okay, so you're taking actions, but your actions are not lined up with weight loss. Your actions are lined up with maintaining or gaining. And so I said, the action that you need to take is to track your calories and to line them up with the calorie count that you need to get to be able to weigh the weight that you want. And she says, I know, but I don't want to do that. And I said, I know. And I get that, because that's how it is for all of us. If you want to make $500 an hour and your action steps are lined up to make $5 an hour, it doesn't matter how much you wish or visualize. I honestly don't think you're not going to earn $1,000 an hour. Not if you're doing $5 an hour activities. It just ain't going to happen. It is not the way that the world works. In order to make $1,000 an hour, not only do you have to visualize it, but you have to take the actions that are in full alignment with that goal. And that's going to mean minding your mind and minding your heart. And that's where a coach comes in really handy. If you right now are trying to radically change your income or any goal or any level of success, it could be a weight goal, it could be a goal around achieving some sort of relationship success, the thing that will throw you off is either, number one, not knowing what the blueprint is, right? Not knowing what the blueprint of the 165-pound person is, so to speak, or not knowing what the blueprint of the $100,000 a year earner is. And if you don't know what the blueprint is, that's your first step. You got to go figure it out. You got to figure out, how are they thinking? How are they acting? What kind of jobs are they doing? Or what kind of activities are they taking if they're self-employed? And if you don't know that, you're just not going to get there. So that's step number one. But that's the easy part. Okay. I mean, you can go on the internet and you can figure this stuff out. You can interview people in your company and figure out what kind of actions you need to take. Now it's simple, but it's hard. So this gal that I'm coaching, and the only reason I bring it up is because I could be telling you the same story about me, me and income, or I could be telling you the same story about me and my weight, right? But she's got to bring her actions into alignment. And what's interesting is 3 times we had asked her to take a new action step. And every time she went to go take that action step, she would veer off from it. It's like she would get close to the goal, then she'd veer off from it, and she'd start doing things that were comfortable again. Let me give another example. One that's not money related, because it's easy to see, right? It's like if somebody wants to become a doctor, but every time they go to enroll in medical school, they apply to become an electrician. It's like, they're not going to become a doctor. They actually have to go through the process of lining up with the goal. This is where a coach can help. So if you've been struggling, if you've been sabotaging, if you've been way off base and you're just not taking the right action steps, you know what you got to do, but you're not doing it. This is where you go out and you find somebody who can give you the help. This is where you go out and you make a picture in your mind of the person who can actually help you get the result that you want. And when you find that person, you pay the money and you say, please help me move from where I'm at now to where I want to go. Or maybe you're working in a company where somebody might be willing to do it for free. That's pretty rare, but it might happen. And you say, help me become responsible to myself. Help me make the commitments to myself that I need to make in order to move my income from one level to the next. Help me take the action steps I need to line up the way I think, the way I feel, and the way I act with what needs to happen. Because here's the reality. In the moment that you start acting with the same actions, you start doing the same things, you start developing the same skills that those highly paid income earners are doing, your income will follow. It won't be that long before you will close the gap. And doubling your income is a matter of having a good blueprint and putting yourself in alignment and then being consistent. If you can do that over a period of 90 days, miracles can happen. So I'm here to help out. And if you'd like to find a coach, I have literally coached thousands of people at this point. I have helped people all over the world do incredible things and to make incredible breakthroughs. I remember one client I was working with. He was making $1,800 a month and he was working 16 hours a day. And like 5-6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, mostly 5 or 6 days a week. He was just grinding, and nothing was working. But really, he was out of alignment. He was taking actions that weren't going to do what he needed to do to get the kind of results that he wanted. And it was just a few sessions that we worked with him to help him to get in alignment, to get a plan, and to stay accountable to the things that would bring the level of income that would generate a new level of life for him. It was literally under 30 days that his income went from $1,800 a month to over $30,000 a month. And it was all by making mindset changes. So if you're looking for help living the abundant life, if you're looking for help going from where you are to where you want to be, find a coach, get an action plan, line yourself up, and then get consistent. And if you do, I will see you at the top of your field. I will see you having so much more success than you've ever imagined possible. I'm looking forward to talking. If you want to get in touch with the office, you can reach me at 801-203-3405, and we'll be talking to you soon.